Hi everyone, I'm Juji and I'm here with Shira, Terrace, Kim, and Lee. We are five friends, speakers, and professionals from different cultures, backgrounds, and age groups coming together to offer healing and inspiration. We are continuing our conversation with Lee and her journey. Wow. I mean, that was quite a cliffhanger you left us with. You know, you're newly married, it's been 6 months, and all of a sudden a huge kink is thrown into your life. You are diagnosed with breast cancer. So let's start there. What was going through your mind? What was happening in your life? Um, where do you go from there?
All right, so this is 6 months into my marriage. We were newlyweds, and this wasn't the only kink actually that was thrown our way at that point. My mother was in the hospital. This is February 1999, by the way. February 1999, so 21 years ago. I got married. My mom went away. She came back from Europe really, really sick. She had pneumococcal pneumonia. She was in the hospital. She was dying. Doctors for weeks thought she was going to die. She was in the ICU. My sister flew in from California. We all were, and my brother left work, and every single day we got zero answers about how my mom was progressing, what was happening. At the same time, about a week or two into this, I'm sitting in the ICU and waiting room, and I got a phone call in that room from a doctor that had examined me the week before. He did a biopsy, a breast biopsy, because I had a lump was found a month prior to. And he called me while I'm in the ICU, like thinking my mom's about to die. And he's like, yeah, we need to come to the office, come see us. I'm like, okay, why? What's going on? I had breast cancer. And the last thing I wanted to do was do anything having to do with me at the time. I was worried for my mom. I would have sacrificed anything just to know that she would live, and she did. That story turned itself around. My mom wound up being in the hospital for about 2 months. She had to relearn how to talk. She was intubated for the longest time. It was a devastating time. And needless to say, I was shocked. I went to see the doctor. He told me I had breast cancer and that I have to have surgery. And at the time it was a lumpectomy. So I wanted to hold off on that because my mom, we didn't know what was going on with her. And I wound up having surgery while she was in the hospital. She was really just coming around when I had my surgery, and every day I'd be in the hospital for hours with her, as my sister and my brother were, and I was massaging her feet, getting some blood circulating. So she was aware and she was conscious now, but barely speaking. And I had to have my surgery, and I didn't tell her. And I went and had my surgery. And this was on, I think it was on my birthday.
Oh my God.
March 11th, 1999. She was still in the hospital. I was scheduled for my surgery. This is the time that, my husband took me to get the surgery. I was put under anesthesia, came back home. They said, don't do anything for at least 24 hours. But 2 hours later, I got into my car and went back to the hospital. Barely could move, but I just remember my mother asking me, she was very weak, and she was like, how come you're not massaging my feet today? And I was like, oh my God, like, it's like I felt so bad, but like, obviously I couldn't do anything.
No.
Wait,
can I ask you a question? Was your husband wasn't fully there for you? Like when you got diagnosed, when you had the surgery, your mom's in the hospital, like, Was your husband, because I know you talked about things of him not being there for you. Was
No,
he?
he was there. Listen, this was the beginning of our relationship, and he was there. He was there, I believe, as much as he could have been. Well, no, I shouldn't say could have been. He could have been there more, but work was very much a priority for him for most of his life. It was like work, 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 work is number one. So he was there, and he loved my mom, and he was there as much as he could.
When did you tell your mom?
Probably a week or two later, maybe when she was getting out of the hospital. And that was tough. That was tough. But there was no way I was telling her while she was in the condition that she was in. And so I was diagnosed, and this time in our life was just the worst. A couple months later, my ex-husband's grandfather died, and he was an amazing man. A few months later, I had radiation treatments. I went through the whole rigmarole. By the summer, I was done. And then my ex's mother died. She was diagnosed with lung cancer, stage 4, smoked. She was a very heavy smoker, but she died. So that year, thank God, was put to rest. She died in December of 99, and my mom was getting better, thankfully. And this is when I feel like I woke up. I woke up to a whole new world. I woke up to a whole new world of awareness in my life. Awareness of what the fuck? I was very much, for a long time after my first diagnosis, and I say first because I had breast cancer 3 times, but this was the time in my life where I was the most afraid and terrified, and I could cry at the drop of a hat if somebody would ask me anything about what happened. And I think deep in my core, the thing that I was afraid of the most is dying. And I didn't know that for a long time. I just knew that the word cancer scared me, and being 32 years old and getting it shouldn't have happened. And so I started to make as many changes as I could in my life to never let that happen again. And it did 2 more times, but I learned so much along the way. For me, getting over that fear is what brought it full circle for me recently. Like 4 years ago, I was diagnosed for my 3rd, and I'll say last time, because I feel it in my heart and in my gut. And
oh, my sweet.
And I know that it was the fear that brought it back all these times. And one day I sat with myself, and I had that, that moment where we kind of, whether it's on the bathroom floor or whatever, and you just fall apart. And I asked myself, what the fuck are you afraid of? What is the worst thing that can happen? And I let myself go there. And where I went was to a place of me being sick again, or having cancer and dying, really dying. And I went there, and I dove deep. And in the end, I realized, if that's going to happen, it's going to happen. I can't be living in fear, because in the end, if I die from this, then what? Then I die, and then it's over. And that's okay if that's how it was meant to be. But why be so scared, shitless, terrified until then, if that's meant to be? And that released me. I felt so at peace after that. And I still do. Today, if I don't think I'll get cancer ever again, but because I believe I healed that part of me, and it took 20 years, it took almost 20 years. I believe that, you know, when I think of death today, it's almost peaceful. It's something that I accept.
Mm.
And as soon as I accepted that whole concept, is when I started to feel better about it. I could talk about my breast cancer today. I can share it with people, my experiences, the 3 times I've had it, how all different they all were. I work as a breast health educator today in schools. I teach people about the risk factors and about things they can do to boost their immune system. And I became a personal trainer, and I studied nutrition. And there is so much of me today that is, it's a 180 of who I was years ago.
Tara?
Lee, do you teach them about energy and how their thoughts affect their body in a negative way? I mean, since that's what your big, huge takeaway was.
So for many years, I've been teaching that to clients. My own clients, I did a lot of health coaching. After personal training for many, many years, I transitioned into health coaching and nutrition, and I did teach people that, whether it was prayer or breathing or meditation or being in their thoughts and their energy. But the breast health education specifically, I have to follow a curriculum, and it does not include that. But it's something I certainly can mention. I mean, we're free to talk about anything,
Yeah.
and that's huge.
It's so important. I mean, energy is just such a huge factor in our bodies.
I have to say something. I mean, Lee, I'm just like blown away by you're such an inspiration. And I have to say that, you know, I belong to this group of women called ACA, which stands for Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families. And it's just a women's group. And the reading this morning literally had to do with the environment you grew up in, forgiving your parents for whatever they did, but also forgiving yourself. And when I hear your story and your isolation, your fear of abandonment, all of that stuff, and where you are now, it's kind of like you've become your own guidance system, you know? And it's like, it's such a beautiful, it's so crazy how we don't see when we're going through it, how it's for our benefit. But I relate to so much of what you're saying. And I'm so happy that you went through what you went through, as shitty as it was, because you're such an inspiration.
Yeah, me too. Listen, you guys, I'm over it. It touched a place in me right now, but I'm so grateful to have learned everything that I have learned until today. And just like you said, Shira, like when I was younger, with the way I think of it now is that I was more of an observer of my life. I would literally be in my physical body observing, like, oh, that sucks, I'm away from these people, and that sucks, this person's mean, and that sucks, these people are not authentic or truthful. And I didn't know how to put it in these words when I was younger, through my teens and even 20s and even 30s. But what I have learned since my breast cancer began, and I was on my journey, which first started with my diet, changed my whole diet, because, you know, I got to boost my immune system and be strong and be clean, and I still am, but there were so many other components to bring to the table that have gotten me to where I am today, and constantly still working. But I'm not an observer anymore. I'm a participant. I'm an active participant, because I get to actively change the way that I think and the way that I feel and the way that life is around me.
Yeah.
And ever since then, I have attracted better people, better situations, a better life. Like
all of us.
Really?
Sorry.
There has just been more abundance in my life in the way that it really matters than ever. And that was the switch from observing to being actively participating, because I didn't know that I could do that. I can do that. We can do that.
Yeah.
We can create our life.
And it doesn't mean that the other stuff doesn't pop up sometimes. It just doesn't like drag you down the rabbit hole.
Right.
You know?
It's how do we now perceive it? How do we now, respond to it?
Lee,
And,
oh, sorry, ladies. I'm like bursting at the seams because I'm sitting here thinking about how all of our journeys, and probably everybody on the planet, does not understand or grow up with. I'm sure most people don't grow up with learning how to love themselves when they're young, that they have that power and ability to do that, have the tools. They don't learn the tools to do it. Like, you don't even think that you don't even think of it as a possibility. It's just not on the radar. And when you were younger and, lonely and feeling these feelings of abandonment and trying to have all this strength to, get through what you were feeling coming over from a different country, and just being so, alone a lot of the time and having to fend for yourself. Like, back then you didn't know that was a thing. We all looked to other people to help love and take care of us and be there for us, like in ways that we didn't know we could. But as we get older, we start to, we all go through something that really helps us understand that. And it seems like your cancer helped you find the acceptance of, definitely, I mean, you're more vulnerable today than you probably ever were, thanks to the cancer. And being, think about where you were in the beginning, not being able to talk about it even to your own mom. I know that was a special, an exception. She was sick. But just how far you've come and how vulnerable you are today, and how many hundreds of students you're talking about it, and adults today. Like, it's just amazing to have watched you come full. I mean, I wasn't in your life back then, but like, to hear you speaking, I'm like, wow, I really see how full circle you've come.
Yeah.
How vulnerable you've gotten, how much you've let things go. I'd really love to ask you about this, because I really relate to everything you're saying. Like, I experienced abandonment myself. Growing up in a family where my dad was an alcoholic, I definitely experienced abandonment in the times when, again, it's like that lack of presence. And as I got older, the one thing that became such a problem for me, and I still struggle with, is having to feel like I'm in control, because for me, it makes me feel safe. And the more I get older, the more I'm conscious of it, the more I work at it, of just letting that go. I just wondered what role control played throughout your life.
I think it played a huge role in my life, from the time that I felt like I needed to control what I learned in school so I could be on top of everything, to controlling what I ate, to controlling how, my body would be, my health would be. I wanted to control my health. After my first diagnosis, I was like, I'm going to control the way that my body is right now, and I'll never have cancer again. So I'm going to go on a raw diet. And I did. And then I went on a vegetarian diet, and I did. And I tried vegan, and I tried this, and I tried that. And then I realized my body was so low in protein. And then so I went back to protein. And all along, it's all whole natural foods. It's raw, it's grass-fed, or it's organic. All of these things now are still very prevalent in my life. I'm not on a raw or anything crazy like that, but I eat whole foods. That was my first form of control with my health. But really that was a one small slice of the entire pie. And I slowly, with my second diagnosis also came at just a crazy time, literally days. We were in a whole adoption process. We were going to adopt another child. My son was now 4 or 5 years old. I have a son. And the same day that I heard that this boy that I was supposed to adopt, after 3 years of tedious, stressful time to go through this process for me alone, because my ex really was not fully on board from day one. But to get back to that, I finally, after 3 years, we got the phone call that said, get ready to go. We finally have a child for you to look at, blah, blah, blah. And it was the next day that I was diagnosed again.
Oh.
And I knew that I needed to shove aside this whole adoption process for my health. And so all of these little things in life gave me a whole nother component of learning something new, a whole new awareness. Because I was like, what do I do next? I'm eating great. I was the billboard of health for all of my friends. And they're like, what? You drink green juices and you do this and you do that. How did you get breast cancer? And I'm like, thinking the same way. And I was still a little afraid then. I was definitely a little afraid then. And that's when I learned all about, and I was working out and I was very physically fit because that was another component. And then I started to be a lot more into whether it was meditation and prayer and digging deep inside myself and things like that. And up until today, where I have learned these things, vulnerability and surrendering and forgiveness and acceptance and what they really truly mean, and what is true strength. And there is nothing that gives me more joy today than, my true strength, which I feel so good about, and giving back to people. So Kim, yeah, I'm constantly today also, besides teaching at the schools, my adult friends and family and neighbors, everybody knows mostly my story. And I'm, even this morning, I got a text from a friend who has a friend who was just diagnosed with cancer. And they very often, I get these like, can you call her? Can she call you? Is it okay to ask you questions? Like, of course. And I feel like it came back to serve me a purpose. Like I'm serving a purpose today, and it's a peaceful feeling. It's
Awesome. I think Tara's had a question, right?
I just wanted to know that the adoption thing has me so curious, and I was just curious if maybe you were missing something emotionally, and is that why you wanted to adopt? Like,
okay, we could go there.
Oh,
well, one of the things with my ex, with this whole abandon thing, it was he was very preoccupied with work all the time. So yeah, in a way, I love kids, and I wasn't planning on having 6, 7, 8 kids. But I definitely wanted 2 to 3, maybe 4 kids. My ex was the opposite. When I was pregnant with my son Jack now, who is 17, I went through the pregnancy, I feel like, alone. We never talked about names because he was not into it. We never talked about excitement. He loves my son, don't get me wrong. But there was no excitement over it because there was worry about money and college. And I'm like, we didn't even have this kid yet. He's in my belly. How can we be talking about college? And this is what it was. And anyway, we had Jack. Amazing. He loves Jack. And but there was always this worry, and then this is the way he lives, and that's what he chooses. And several years later, or very soon after, a year or 2 later, I said, we should try for another child. He didn't want to. And by the time Jack was 4 or 5, and now I was close to 40, I decided it's best that we try to adopt, because I, at that point, didn't want to be pregnant anymore. I didn't want to be pregnant close to 40. That was my choice. I hated being pregnant. I hated what it did to my body. I didn't feel right. For me, it sucked. And so the adoption thing, and I figured, we're in a good situation here to embrace and welcome another baby or child into our world and give them a good life. My husband's, the first thing he said to me when I suggested we try to adopt is, adopted kids were fucked up. I knew people at school, and they're just, and I'm like, what? I'm like,
Oh my
God.
God, but they need love.
Well, and obviously, I mean, people who are not adopted could be very messed up. It was just, you know, and these are the types of things where like we didn't see eye to eye, and somehow I twisted his arm, and he very hesitantly agreed, and I was on this path on my own. It was all me with the paperwork and the back and forth with the courts and everything, and then and fast forward 3 years later, which was 10 years from my first breast cancer.
Wow.
So that was when I heard it then, and I knew within 24 hours, I said, it's not meant to be. It's not meant to be for me to adopt. I don't know why. And it saddened me, and it saddened me for the child that I was going to adopt.
Oh man.
But
Lee, everything you say, I'm just all I keep seeing is like every single thing you've been through has made you so much stronger. And I know that I always feel like there's a reason for everything, and I'm sure there's a lot in your life that you feel like there is no reason, you know, like there's no rhyme or reason why you didn't get that child. There's no rhyme or reason why you got breast cancer 3 times. But I just can't help but see how strong each and every single experience has made you to who you are today. And you give that strength to so many. You help so many people with that strength.
Yeah, listen, I gotta say, you know, I got choked up because it took me back to that moment, but I don't have any regrets. I don't have any regrets that I married who I married, and that it didn't work out for me to adopt. I can't.
You've surrendered, you know?
What's that?
I said you've surrendered. That's
yeah. And and a whole new thing, you know, that I do is you just gotta look forward. You look forward, you know, you can't look back. And of course I would have done things a little differently if I could, but like, come on, but I didn't. And here I am. And so I have an amazing son.
He is amazing.
And who needs other kids when you have one amazing son? Like, I'm grateful. Some people can't have one.
Right.
You know, I just feel like the whole regret thing, you know, that's like, you know, taking something when you say like, oh, this was a mistake versus a lesson, or like looking back at your life and regretting not doing something, you know, like you've done a lot, and it may not be what you expected it to be. It may not have been
Your story.
from point A from point B to point B kind of thing, but like whose is really? I mean, are any of you right now sitting in a place where you ever thought you would be?
Yes, I am on this stool. Totally expected to be sitting on this stool.
In the middle of a worldwide crisis at that, you know.
I don't know what is going on with the world right now, because I haven't paid attention in like 3 weeks. All I know is I'm still here.
It's the Twilight Zone.
Lee, do you feel alone right now with what we're going through? Like you just feel free, right? After
my God. I feel so free. I have felt free for years now, you guys. I mean, and especially after my divorce. So for the last 7 years, and I know Juji with what you do with human, there's a whole 7-year thing, but I gotta say, like, I feel very free. And you know, I feel less lonely than when I was married. But I also just feel good. I feel happier. I feel much better able to combat these things that life throws at you. And that's the most important thing. These are the tools that, you know, that there's nothing better. There's nothing better.
Amen, Lee. Amen to that statement.
All right, guys, I think it's time to wrap up this episode.
No.
I have like 2 more questions, but I'm gonna wait. If you don't mind, I'll ask later.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. Such a beautiful life lesson in there. And I know, we all know that everyone watching will benefit from this. If you guys like our videos, please subscribe to our channel and be sure to let us know if you have any topic requests or questions by commenting below. And we'll see you soon. Thank you so much for watching, and please stay safe, everyone.
We love you, Lee.
Love
Love
you.
you.
Thank you, guys.